Good afternoon, everyone. Come on into the room. Welcome to all of you this afternoon. We're so pleased that you've joined us for this joint webinar with BIA Advisory Services and SalesFuel 2021 Local Digital Event Series that we hope you'll attend each and every month. We'll gather here, and this month we're going to focus on home services. Home improvement opportunities soared during COVID-19. Why and what's next? Now, before we move on, I just want to give a little housekeeping note here for you. The video and the deck will be available afterwards, so don't worry about that. We'll be in touch. If you have tech problems with your audio or your video, go ahead and email webinars@bia.com for some help with that. We have a team that's at the ready to receive your email with that, and that's where you go if you're having a challenge. We're going to be taking questions after each subvertical. Questions that we don't get to, we will answer after the webinar has completed. We'll be reaching out to you, but don't be shy and don't be angry if your question isn't answered in real time. Trust me, we will get to it. Okay, let's move on, Dave. Next slide. I want to introduce to you your team of panelists. We have Tom Buno, the CEO and founder of BIA Advisory Services, Celie Smith, President and CEO of SalesFuel, Celine Matisse, she's the Vice President of Insights and Analytics at BIA Advisory Services. And my name is Audrey Strong. I'm Vice President of Communications here at SalesFuel. Today's discussion, just to give you a heads up, kind of what the route is that we're going to take with you today, the home services ad forecast for 2021, the ad pie, I'm going to show you how it's divided up, the shift over to digital, and then sub-verticals of lawn and garden, plumbers and HVAC, flooring, and other building services. And then what's coming in March, the next one that we're going to have in this series is road trips, and we'll tell you the next couple months after that as well. April and May, we know our topics as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tom Buno. He's going to take it away, Tom.
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you all for joining us. I thought I would start with a little bit of a recap just to set the stage. And this is the slide that we had in our first webinar back in January. And what you see is that we estimate that total local advertising this year will be about $137.5 billion. Now, that's significantly down from where we were in 2019. It's about $12 billion down. You know, we're up $3.4 billion from what we saw in 2020. And obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty as we enter this year as to how things will perform. And even though we're up $3.4 billion from last year, that's a little bit misleading because 2020 was a year with significant political advertising. We estimated political advertising at about $7 billion. So you look at this and you say, well, it's actually a pretty nice increase for a non-political year. So that's kind of the background. And what you'll also see here is that direct mail is the largest category at around almost 23%. Online and mobile both at about 17%. And we've got television around 12% when you take into account online and OTT. And we've got radio at a little over 9%. So that's kind of the starting point as you think about the overall local advertising nationwide. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about the home service vertical. This is made up of, for the way BIA tracks it, we have 9 sub-verticals. You can see them listed here. We estimate that there'll be about $7.3 billion of local advertising spent on these 9 sub-verticals. What's interesting about this category and this vertical is that direct mail gets about 36%. Now, on the nationwide slide for all local advertising, I just mentioned it's about 23% for direct mail. So this is an area where direct mail is very strong. You'll also notice that mobile and online are about 13% each, radio and TV around 7% each. So it's a different kind of mix of local advertising than we see in a lot of the other verticals. The other point I would make is that we came out with a report last year, so any of our subscribers to BIA Advantage could pull the July report from last year where we went into a lot of detail about home improvement. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we're focused on in this series of webinars over the course of the year is digital advertising and the shift to digital. What you see here is that from 2019 to 2021, for this vertical, home services, digital went up from 29% to 35%. Now, overall, if we look at nationwide, all the different verticals, we have digital at almost 44%. So this is a vertical that doesn't have as much digital advertising, but clearly you see the trend that's going on. It's moving in that right direction. So while we'll have 5 of the different verticals that we track that'll be over 50% by 2025, this won't be one of them. This will be trailing a little bit longer to get to that level. On the right, you see how the $2.6 billion of digital advertising splits for this year, and you'll see that other display, classified, and search are the largest categories. Next slide, please. So this is how the pie breaks for the 9 different subverticals that make up home centers. What you'll see here is that home centers, plumbers and HVAC, other building services, and lawn and garden account for the major largest categories. And the other point that I would make is that given what we've just gone through and the fact that we're doing this virtually and most of us are working from home, we've seen a lot more that's been spent on advertising in this vertical. And if you look at these 3 on the left, lawn and garden, paint and wallpaper stores, and hardware stores, they're all down less than 2% from 2019. So this is clearly an area that has held up much better than many of the other verticals that we take a look at. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Celine, and we can go to the next slide.
Thanks, Tom. So before we get into all of the subverticals, Locology has this great study, and what you guys are looking at is a heat map of searches in the past week and sources used to search for home improvement categories. And you can see the green is the higher, and you know, as we go to the red, it's lower. But just to give you an understanding that digital is not just search for these groups. For this group, if you look at websites are growing, social networking and some of the categories have a really big impact on where consumers are finding and searching for home improvement. So just, you know, we thought this would be interesting to add from Locology because it shows that consumer side of, and as we get into the verticals, you'll see how that reflects in ad spend. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to go through some of these subverticals. Now, we call them subverticals because for advantage, they're within that home services category. So the first one we're going to look at, and Tom mentioned, lawn and garden equipment and supply stores, which are growing. So as we look at that, in 2021, for all the markets in the US, there's going to be $722 million spent by lawn and garden on advertising. Again, like Tom showed, direct mail in this category is huge, but I want to put a little asterisk by that direct mail number of 42% of the ad spend for lawn and garden. Our direct mail definition includes nationally targeted local direct mail and catalogs. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm a big gardener and I love flowers. I get a ton of seed catalogs and garden catalogs for plants and flowers and all that. And so that's included in there. So when you look in your local market and localized, those direct mail numbers will probably be a little smaller than that. So direct mail still is #1 locally, but it's not, the share might not be 42%. It might be closer to 20%, depending on your market. Besides direct mail, and when we look at lawn and garden spend, online and mobile both have mobile's got second largest share. Mobile also is growing over 10% between 20 and 21 in their share of spend. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, there we go. And then when we look at the split of how lawn and garden stores are spending on advertising, traditional, as you can see, still has the largest share of the pie. Digital's at 34%. Digital is not going to be equal to traditional spend until 24 or 25. And when we look at the right and we look at that breakout of what they're spending on digital, and again, getting back to that heat map, you're looking at search and other display are both the biggest categories. Other display is your just basic display ads. We call it other display because if you look at that little slice of video display is going to be any pre, mid, or post advertising around video content online. So that's why we have video display versus other display on here. And that share of other display and search is going to continue past 21 through 2025. You're going to see those two slices grow. Video is going to grow slightly because, as we see, it's going to grow 6%. So it's 4.7 now for video display. It's going to grow to 6. That includes, that OTT share, and we see that OTT share growing too. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Lee, and Lee's going to give us some more insights based, into the insights into what Lawn & Garden is happening and what's going on with them. So I'll take it away, Lee.
Thank you very much, Celine. And one of the reasons why we do this series of webinars with our friends at BIA is, as Celine just showed you there, that, there is a shift going from traditional media spend then over to digital. So given that our clients are traditional media companies then who are now selling digital, we're helping you make that transition. That is the whole point of this digital series this year. One of the things that we do at AdMall is that we have a group of analysts in that analyzes market trends, primarily what the customers are doing, what the market itself is doing and how to market to it. And so we have that for over 440 business categories in our local account intelligence report. So we picked some of the most interesting trends that we're seeing for the lawn and garden industry from these reports. 18 million consumers became gardeners last year, and the growth is expected to continue in 2021. There's a new trend of outdoor living rooms, which means that whether it be gas grills or outdoor lighting or patio furniture or hardscaping, things like that, because people are spending more time at home, and we're going to expect that to continue even with COVID vaccines. People may not venture out into banquet halls and event centers and everything like that, and may decide then to have the graduation parties and things like that, in the backyard in a patio type setting. Then once everyone gets vaccinated, so even when we get into the second half of 2021, this is a trend that we expect to see continue to great degree. Next, vegetable gardens, pollinator-friendly gardens. The interest in both of those things is growing. Battery power, outdoor power equipment, because people don't want to fuss with the gasoline or all the maintenance, and because they're working from home and schooling from home or wherever, they're quieter. And of course, the big box competition continues to be fierce. Tom showed you a big pie wedged in for home centers. The Lowe's, the Home Depots, the Menards of the world. Local dealers must stand out by promoting their customer service and their knowledgeable staff. Basically, think of everything that annoys you about going into a big box store. And then those that are selling plants, locally sourced plants. Classes by master gardeners. And of course, then if you're an outdoor power equipment dealer, you have to promote the repair and the maintenance services because there's money to be made there. But also then, if a machine breaks down, a lawnmower, a chainsaw, whatever, a trimmer, they're right there in your shop ready to buy a new one. Next slide. We're also going to be sharing with you interesting tidbits then from our audience scan data. And here's something from the digital audience for garden centers. Did you know that gardeners are 32% more likely to use Pinterest than the average US adult? So that tells you that if gardeners is the target market that your clients want to reach, your accounts want to reach, don't ignore Pinterest. Now, don't just focus on Facebook and Twitter and the like. Next slide. Then we also want to share with you selling tips. And I'm just going to share with you 3 right at the very top, and we'll leave the other ones that you can read later. A good discovery question to ask is, what percentage of your sales are residential versus commercial? This is an important question to ask because you nearly need 2 different messages because you have 2 different audiences here, whether you're speaking to a consumer who's buying for their home or whether you're speaking to a business that's buying for their office space. So 2 different messages, 2 different opportunities there. And if you know what the percentages are, that gives you a pretty good idea as to where you want to allocate budget. Take advantage of co-op advertising, speaking of budget, and the market development funds. And we have plenty of those in AdMall then for you to draw from that can really expand the ad budgets. And right now too, there's a lot of limited time manufacturer promotions that are being promoted nationally, whether they be in digital or online, television. There's a great opportunity for your local dealers to piggyback off of those and any financing offers or new product drops that may be happening. Next slide.
Okay,
So,
we've
Audrey,
got some questions.
Yeah.
Yep, we do. So Lee, do you have a feel or did you pull a number of the percentage of customers you think are switching to electric versus gas powered lawn equipment? Like I know I have a cordless tiller and all
You know,
that stuff.
I don't have that, but of course, as usual, when I get asked a question that I'm stumped on or whatever, then I draw upon my expert, which is Kathy Cressett, who is the Vice President of Research here over at SalesFuel and handling the AdMall side. So Kathy, if you work your
She
magic
might
fingers
send it through.
and come up with a number, please pass it along.
Yeah, if she gives us the answer, I'll announce it later.
Okay.
All right, two other quick questions. Some of these from Tom's section in the front. On slide 5, does traditional advertising include local newspaper and their digital platforms? Is the question.
All right. We split them. We have online newspaper in digital and we have print newspaper in traditional.
Okay. And where does social and OTT fit into digital? From Kelly Hazel. Hi, Kelly.
Yeah, that's something that we describe in Advantage in detail, and it really kind of gets blended. We look at it in different categories, and we actually are looking at pulling it out as a separate to look at social separately. But right now, it's kind of blended in terms of the different categories.
Great. One last question before we move to the next subvertical. This is a good one from Erica Roney. She says, Lee, how many vendors don't allow co-op to be spent on digital? She's found that some vendors just will not allow co-op to be applied to digital.
That's absolutely true, and it's something that you have to be mindful of. Just don't assume because there's a co-op program, you have to check the eligible media, just like you did with traditional media. You know, where sometimes your particular media is covered and sometimes it's not. Digital sometimes is not covered because, you know, particularly in this particular area, you know, where some of the manufacturers are a little bit more old school. So, you know, this is a category right here where you may see more of that sort of thing where you may not be able to use it as freely for digital as you want. Some may do digital advertising, but not do some of the other forms of digital marketing. So again, it's like check the program, especially in AdMall, check out the eligible media section there. We'll give you a heads up about, you know, what you want to use, what the retailer wants to use, whether that's cleared for digital or not.
Perfect. There are more questions, but as I promised you, everyone, we divide up the question list after our webinars and answer everybody. So keep the questions coming, but we're going to move on because we got to get you guys all out of here on time. Take it away. Plumbing.
Oh yeah, so on to my favorite right now because I'm in Dallas, plumbers and HVAC. I actually had a plumber out here on Saturday, next slide, due to all of our weather and freezing pipes. So in 2021, 1.3 billion plumbers and HVAC are going to be spending on advertising. Again, if you look at the direct mail number, smaller, but still number one. Mobile, no surprise there. Mobile has the next highest share. But if you look to online and TV, broadcast TV are pretty on par with each other at that 9%. So for the plumbers and HVAC, you know, mobile on here has a good share, and it's going to be growing 13% from 20 to 21. Online and OTT, while they might not be on here as having big pie share, they are also showing substantial growth. So they might be a smaller percentage of spend, but they're growing the fastest of all the media for plumbers and HVAC spending. Next slide. And then when we look at that traditional digital split, plumbers and HVAC are more aggressive with their use of digital and traditional. And actually digital is probably going to pass or be at par with digital within the next 5 years, maybe in the next 2 years. And if you look at that 558 million in digital ad spend, what does that look like? A little bit of a different mix. Classified verticals. Classified verticals are Thumbtack, which I was just on the other day. Home Advisor is going to be thought of as a classified vertical. So a vertical site that has a lot of advertising. It could be some of the home and garden. It could be Pinterest, for example, too, depending on how you think of Pinterest, where they're driving leads and there's advertisements available for these businesses. Again, other display are your display ads. So, you know, a different mix here for plumbers and HVAC and how they're allocating their ad dollars to digital. Don't forget video display on there. Looks small. It's only 8%, but by 2025, it's going to be growing to 13%. So don't discount OTT or your online TV advertising. And I'll turn it over to Lee.
Next slide, here we go. So we wanted to talk about the market trends that are in this category. The work from home trend is causing more consumers to pay even more attention than to their home's heating and cooling. And so now they're willing to spend a little bit more extra to have their system serviced than they have been in the past. That's a trend that we're seeing reported by a lot of HVAC dealers in particular. Interest in solar panels, battery storage, and generators are expected to continue the momentum. It's increasingly top of mind after the events of last week. And Audrey, I know you're in Dallas, Texas, and you've got solar panels on your home, but now it's like you need some battery storage then to make sure that you're not at the mercy of the grid. So we expect that now that people are thinking all around the country, then thinking a little bit more about that, not just during thunderstorm seasons when the power goes out. Consumers are buying more high-end models. They're buying more duct cleaning and really more focused on indoor air quality, whether it be a humidifier, a dehumidifier, or anything then to make sure that the air quality is better because they're living in it more often. And there's an increase in kitchen expansion projects, bathroom remodels, and also swimming pool construction. All of them have a plumbing component to them. And so that's another market trend to be mindful of. Next slide. Interesting digital audience fact is that HVAC system shoppers are 93% more likely than all US adults to have acted in response to an audio podcast in the last year. So when you're listening to your crime and murder podcast to figure out who done it, chances are there's an HVAC buyer waiting there on the other end listening with you. Next slide. So selling points for selling to HVAC dealers and plumbing services, I'm going to give you just 3 of them. Reputation management is absolutely top priority because whether it be the ratings, the reviews, the Better Business Bureau rating, without it, they're sunk. And when there's bad reviews, they need to be answered. Bad things need to be flooded out. And so that's a really top priority for this category and a great opportunity for you to sell. Local long tail keywords are close behind. So it's not just about air conditioning, it's air conditioning in Poughkeepsie, New York, or it's duct cleaning in Grove City, Ohio, that sort of thing. So that's also very important. Recommend SMS text messaging before and after significant weather events, whether they be a snowstorm, a thunderstorm, a hurricane, or anything like that. It's a great opportunity for these folks should be texting then their clientele and the people that are on their list. Also, keep in mind then when it comes to plumbing is that there's a lot of franchised operations, whether it be names like Eco Plumber or Roto-Rooter or Mr. Rooter or anything like that. These are franchised operations, and you're likely to have multiple locations, multiple operations then that all have the same decision maker. So you have a great opportunity there to get in tune with that. So even bigger opportunity there. Audrey?
So we have just one question about this section, which is not to be Texas centric, but what do you say to HVAC and plumbing businesses that say, look, I'm an essential business. I got more work than I need, particularly if you're in a disaster mop up, such as the folks in Texas. So I don't want to advertise. Like, I don't even need to do that. What is your strategy that you advise for prospecting?
What happens next? Yeah, so advertising is not necessarily about how busy you are today because it takes a while to work. So it's like you might be flooded with plenty of business and more than you know what to do with right now. But what happens then 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months down the road? That's what you have to be thinking about.
Very good.
Celine, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, just from the consumer side experience, I know that in my area, like where Audrey and I are, I literally called 15 different plumbers and got on 15 different lists. So you might seem busy, but when it comes down to it, I mean, I got serviced by, one of those people pretty quickly. So that I was taken off of 15 other lists. So, I think that, again, you still need to continue at least your brand building and your awareness and in that sense. And, even if you can communicate on social media that, not to give up, because a lot of my friends have been giving up too on just even trying to schedule. So, I mean, there's going to be need out there even after a disaster ongoing.
That makes sense. Okay, let's move on.
All right, my other favorite subject, flooring. So let's go to flooring. Yeah, next slide. Okay, so flooring, 530 million in the US this year. Direct mail, a little higher here, 38%. Again, perspective on flooring. Lumber liquidators, again, is a good example. They do send catalogs out occasionally through direct mail. So think about that. Think about the franchises that might be sending out direct mail locally. So that might be a little smaller based on your market when you think about localized. But again, on here, if you look, online and TV both have really big shares of the media, along with mobile and radio. So floor covering stores a little different, a little more diversified in how they break out their ad spend. TV is going to be growing 10% from 20 to 21. Radio's got a slightly lower growth factor between 20 and 21 on spend. Next slide. Again, as we know from what we saw in the share of media from the last slide, traditional has a bigger share of the pie piece, but digital is still at 31%. Again, that's going to be growing over our forecasted period to be equal to traditional, at least by 2025. The 165.8 million in digital ad spend, if you look again, display ads, and here search is a little bigger. So display and search are going to get most of those ad dollars. Video display, again, is 8.7%. It's not going to be growing as fast as we saw with plumbers and HVAC, but it's still going to be growing a little. So looking at how you can benefit from that and add some, pre, mid, post roll ads is going to be important. Take it away, Lee.
Okay, so let's talk about the market trends. And here we have a picture of Celine's house. Not really. But anyway, we have about 10% of consumers will be in the market for new carpeting or flooring during the year 2021, which is a lot. Now, the reason for this picture was not to make a bad joke. It was to illustrate the fact that sales of hardwood floors, hardwood lookalikes, and area rugs continue to rise, especially. So you're seeing a lot of people then that are foregoing wall-to-wall carpet, for example, going with hardwood floors and putting an area rug on top of it. That seems to be one of the biggest trends right now. So there's more pet ownership, there's more working from home, there's more homeschooling. So pet-proof and kid-proof flooring options are now trending upward. And demand is increasing for radiant flooring, especially in bathrooms. I'd never heard of this up until recently. But the latest trend in this market is spot heating installations in front of vanities. So your feet are nice and warm and everything like that on a cold morning. And, it's baked into the floor somehow. And I don't know, it's a trend. And so it's like if you've got a flooring dealer then that's selling that, it's something they need to be advertising right now. Speaking of the digital audience, next slide, please. Carpet flooring buyers are 51% more likely than all other U.S. adults who have responded to a print or digital magazine ad in the past 30 days. So it's not surprising that magazines then very colorful, very visual, everything like that. And of course, so too is carpet and flooring. It's very visual, very stylish. And so it's something that you have to keep in mind there, whether you're selecting social media or even traditional media, or in this case, then traditional media then with a digital component. It's something you have to be mindful of. It's an opportunity. Next slide. So because if style is important as price, you're always going to have some carpet dealers out there, whatever, that's advertising the lowest cost per square foot and everything like that. Set that aside for a second. If style is important as price, one of the things that drives me nuts is to see retailer websites then that have old, outdated photography or photography of styles that are no longer in style. So that attention to detail has to be there. It also has to be optimized for mobile because, as you know, a lot of people are using the mobile devices. When it comes to flooring, co-op advertising, definitely. Again, the limited time promotions, of course, then just as big a factor in flooring as they are in lawn and garden. Audrey.
Okay, we have two questions, one for each of you. So Lee, you're up on deck first. What is the normal percentage of consumers in the market for flooring? You talked about 10%, but
we're normally
is that
seeing around
low?
Yeah, we normally see around 8%.
Okay.
What's up a little bit, yeah.
And then Celine, question about your slide 23. When you say TV, are you including cable and broadcast together, please? Is the question.
It's just broadcast TV. We separate cable differently as its own. So it's just broadcast TV.
Excellent. Let's move on.
All right. And now our final catch-all, other home building services. If we went through glaziers, painters, electricians, we'd be on here forever. So at BIA in Advantage, we kind of lump everybody together. But I want to put a little star by that. When you guys are off the webinar and you get the survey, or if you get a chance, shoot us an email and let us know what other home building services you'd like to see us do and break out. If it's painters, we'd love to hear about that. That helps us talk to our chief economist and his team and try to get them to add that as a new vertical category in Advantage and in our research. So, so this is a catch-all for everything that we haven't already covered when it comes to people that come in your house, carpenters, window repair, wallpaper, all that. Okay, so just think about that. It's a big category, 784 million. Again, direct mail, 25%, might be smaller in your market. If you can see on here, mobile, it has a large share. And again, we're seeing that online and TV at almost 10% of share. And then radio at 5 is the next one. Next slide. Same thing here, digital is a little more aggressive with traditional and digital, and we're gonna see that equalize in the next 2 years. So they're gonna be 50-50. Digital ad spend, again, because this is catch-all, we're gonna see a good slice of it in verticals. So, you know, people that were on home improvement sites or on, again, like on Home Advisor, Thumbtack, or others, where they're gonna be advertising and driving leads. Other display is going to be your display ads. You know, most of the stuff is going to be very visual, just like the picture Lee put up of my my living room, which is actually, I actually have those colors. What a shocker. You see that in other display. Search, not such a big a deal. Again, but video display is going to be growing. Don't discount video display as another category, especially with the visual impact that these types of businesses have and need to have with their customers. And I'll turn that over to Lee.
So as we get into the market trends for 2021, next slide, Dave. By the way, a big shout out to Dave Blakesley, who is driving the controls here. Normally it's Adam Ambro for us here at SalesFuel. So Dave Blakesley is doing it today, and he is our Vice President of Training. And those of you who have AdMall, you know Dave. And we appreciate Dave a whole bunch here. So in 2021, the replacement window market is expected to grow by nearly 5% this year. Impact-resistant windows are becoming more popular, especially in markets that are prone to extreme weather events, so that any place with thunderstorms, hailstorms, hurricanes, that sort of thing. Another category, fencing, is up as homeowners who are spending more time in their backyards, as I mentioned earlier. Well, they want privacy from their neighbors when they're out and about in their outdoor living rooms. And so, you know, the sales of fencing are now up. When it comes to roofing, metal roofing is trending. It's expected to increase significantly in 2021. It's more expensive, but it's also more protective during damaging weather. Now, as we were talking about just a little bit ago, contractors on average, you know, outside of Texas, have an average 10-week backlog now, and sometimes are forced to wait for supplies. So, you know, they're advertising now to try to get projects scheduled, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to happen right away because of this backlog of everything that's happening. Such demand, but also then the supply is down as well in some cases. So this is why we're getting a little bit of a backlog here. Next slide. When it comes to the digital audience, well, in the last year, 46% of roofing shoppers were influenced by pre and post-roll video advertising. So again, people want to take a look at what a roof's going to look like on a house. Sure, they are influenced by those video ads. Next slide. So in selling to roofing and window installers next year, of course, reputation management is top priority for this group as well. But one of the questions you want to ask is, how many new projects can you take on for 2021? What does the rest of the year look like for you? So we want to know then what the capacity is and their ability to fill that. Also, another question to ask: what percentage of your projects are financed? And the financing that's available, you know, for some of these projects are very expensive, so we need to make sure that that the customers are aware of that. Again, co-op advertising. Another thing too is, like, which we haven't mentioned. Yeah, we're still in COVID, we're still in a pandemic, so we're still dealing with COVID-19. So all the installers, the home contractors, of course, need to make mention then that they are abiding by safe practices as they come into your home. And of course, that still needs to be advertised. Audrey.
Well, I have very exciting news. Our Vice President of Research, Kathy Crossett, has given us the answer regarding electric versus gas lawn equipment. All right, would you like to venture a guess what percentage now is electric of the marketplace?
I
Would you like
can't
to
even guess. No,
She says 15 to 20% now is electric.
that's
Wow.
amazing. I would have
Depending
guessed
on the
what I-
category, whether it's a mower or a trimmer or whatever it is. So Kathy, thank you for sending that through. Very interesting, right? We have quite a number of questions here. Bob Morris, hi Bob. He'd like to know a little bit about why radio seems to be the lowest numbers in the statistics you presented today. And is AM or FM stronger in terms of a?
That's a good question. We do not break out by AM, FM stations. We do have that data available in Advantage, though, on a revenue basis, but not on a category basis for ad revenue.
As I-
Yeah, and radio, Lee, I don't know, do you want to talk about radio? It doesn't mean that they're small. It just means that they're not the top 5 biggest share. So they could be it could be 6 in some of those categories. But on those slides, we just gave you the top 5. That's it.
Yeah, and so if radio shows up there, that was the point as I understood it. Then radio is actually in the top 5, so that's not small at all. That's actually a very sizable share. And so, when you think of radio, the AM FM question is actually a good one, because when you think of AM radio, sometimes you think about on Saturday the gardening shows or the home fix-up shows and that sort of thing, and people are tuning into those. Or you think of radio stations that are sponsoring home and garden shows, which we're not having in person so far this year, but we're having them virtually. But when things go back to normal, say next year or whatever, radio stations play a very big role in that as well. So. Yeah, the AM FM normally you would jump and you'd say, oh, it's definitely got to be FM because that's where all the the listeners are and everything like that, but not necessarily, because if you're talking about contextual advertising, the AM definitely is a player there.
We have 3 questions regarding direct mail. They all came in bing, bing, bing all at the same time. This is perfect. You guys couldn't have timed this any better. Doesn't direct mail have less than 1% ROI? And with the open rates of direct mail so small, why do people keep wanting to use it? And or somebody says, where is the money moving to digital coming from? Is it moving away from direct mail?
So direct mail, again, the fact that they can target to zip codes is very appealing to everyone, and that it gets in the hands of people, and I think that's not going to change. I think also to remember with our direct mail numbers on there, if you think of all the franchises, those are national, targeted local to drive leads to the local franchisees or brands, also to, for example, for like lawn care, if you think about lawn care. So you're going to see that a lot, and that's what's driving those dollars more than it is the local person. I think too, we talk about catalogs for direct mail, and we also have, there's a lot of direct mail magazines that you get that's is a direct mail piece, but it's a magazine on home improvement that's geared towards different segments. The fact that they can segment by subdivision and by zip code is always really appealing. What was the other question, part of the question, Audrey?
If money goes away from one category, it flows into another. Yeah.
It shifts away somewhat from traditional. Some of it will be coming out of the largest share, which is direct mail. It just depends, but we do see some shifting. We do see, and back to radio, I mean, even though radio wasn't top 5 on some of those, radio online also, getting back to the podcasting and people streaming, in some of those categories, radio was just right below the 5, radio online. And if it's not, it's also, it might be growing more than traditional media. So yeah, those ad dollars are shifting out of some of the traditional channels, some of the ones that aren't on there, that the home improvement segment is normally really strong in, like yellow pages and directories. We're seeing those ad dollars move out of there also.
Hey, I'd like to jump in for a second and just talk a little bit about that question about open rates for direct mail, et cetera. Part of our focus at BIA is really helping clients to develop sales campaigns to take dollars away from other traditional media. And we really believe that as we go through the different verticals and sub verticals that we cover, that you can identify certain things where direct mail may be vulnerable. These may be opportunities to really make a campaign to go after some of that advertising dollar And we've seen some of our clients be very successful in doing that. And I think that's a real interesting area for focus. And a lot of our discussions at BIA are, instead of focusing on your direct competition, which for television and radio may be around 10% plus or minus, it's going after that other 90%. And we talk a lot about digital here in this series, and that's really important. But there's also opportunities to take share from other traditional media. So it really is a combination of how you develop those sales campaigns to really go after what we're identifying as significant dollars.
Yeah, but Tom, when I worked in radio and I sold radio advertising, it's like the station manager would be listening to competing radio stations, and he would write down the names of the advertisers. And our sales meeting would consist of, okay, these guys are advertising over here. Why aren't they advertising with us? And we would get so fixated then on the other radio stations, that we ignored the other media, as you mentioned. But over here at AdMall, our philosophy is, instead of focusing on being the brains in of competing media, is focus on the customer, and focus on not only your customer but their customer's customer. So understand where they're at, what they're using, how they're using digital, how they're using traditional, for that matter, the customers in this case. And then at the same point in time, focus on the problems and the opportunities that your advertiser has, and put that first and foremost well above your need then to take market share away from a competing media.
One
and what
last
will
question.
happen is that the revenue will grow from there exponentially compared to just being uber competitive.
Okay, one last question, then we'll move on. Somebody asking and saying that interesting that advertising on cable networks is not represented here at all. Why is that?
Again, cable does not have, we were just representing the top 5 share. That doesn't mean that there aren't cable dollars in there and that they're substantial. It just wasn't one of the top by share and by amount. So yeah, whoever that was will be happy. I'll be happy to send you the cable numbers for each one of these verticals after, for sure. Yeah, again, when we do those pie charts, we track 16 different media. And so in order to make it easier, like Tom's first slide where he showed the pie with all the media, that's all the media. So what we were trying to do is just hone in for y'all on the top 5, and then also to just kind of point out on the digital who's growing and who's not, and for the digital side. So it is, radio and cable are still substantial in the market. When you look at the traditional pie spread and that share of traditional media, they're still in there. They're just not TV, where we called out TV's in the top 5, and then, under that is cable and radio usually.
Yeah, on that first slide where we looked at total local advertising, we estimate local cable advertising at 3.4%. So it's separate from television advertising, as Celine mentioned earlier, and that's about the magnitude overall. And of course, it will vary from vertical to vertical.
Right, Tom. And so when we were looking at some of the categories where TV had 9% share, if you think about that, that was the cutoff for us of those top 5. Cable could have been right underneath that, and radio at 3 to 4% of the market, but it's still a substantial amount depending on the vertical you're looking at.
Perfect. Well, I know you guys had some next steps you wanted to talk about, so we can move to the next section.
Yeah, and these are all really great questions, because we've given you guys a lot of information, a lot to think about. So what are you going to do with all of it? And we also have a really great handout that we're going to give you too. But I just wanted to talk about my tool, and I'm going to let Lee talk about our AdMall also. An Advantage, you've seen what Advantage can do for you in analysis, and Tom mentioned it too, that you can track the spending in your local market across different media, including cable and radio, newspapers, magazines, and online formats. You can look, as we showed you on here, opportunity in a vertical ad spend in a market. And for all my Advantage clients that are on Hey All, and don't forget, you guys can go in and look in your local market for this information. We actually have what you saw on the slides broken down into each and every market in the US. And again, on top of that, you can look at what other media are competing against or with to extend, the campaigns that you're doing with your clients. And you can also strategize your opportunity for digital. And, we see that there's a shift in dollars this will, Advantage helps our clients go and look for that opportunity in digital to complement what they're doing for, say, on direct mail, and maybe increase advertiser budgets. Lee?
So on AdMall clients, prospect with the limited time media sales opportunities. Every week we have 25 or so pre-qualified media sales opportunities, and a lot of them are focused right now in the area of home services, home improvement, because of the time of year that we're in. So take a look at those every single week. We include the co-op programs. We tell you who the list of local dealers are that are selling that product, ad materials if they're available, and of course, all kinds of great data to sell with. Conduct a digital audit to identify digital opportunities for your prospects. I go back to that heat map that Celine showed at the beginning of the webinar, and think about how much red there was in that chart. And so the point there is to focus the digital advertising and marketing efforts on the stuff that works and works the most. It's better to do the things that are in green well and do them right than it is to worry about trying to cover all the bases, because remember, a lot of that heat map though was red and yellow. So you can share zip code level consumer spending and housing data straight from AdMall with your accounts. So what we have there, we can tell you, the value of homes. We can tell you the value of condos. We can tell you where the rich neighborhoods are. We can tell you where the recent movers are. We can tell you who's spending the most amount of money on heating oil or flooring or a variety of other things like that, down to the zip code level. That can be very helpful if you're trying to help somebody target. Also, if it's one of the things that they like about direct mail and you're not selling direct mail, then it's being able to have that data to be able to show, well, here is the broad area that you really need to cover then. So it allows you to do that if you so decide to do that, if it's what is best for serving the customer. Know your customer's customer, and that's where the audience scan profiles come into play, and especially when we talk about what types of media do people respond to or not in the last 30 days or in the last year. And we have that data for every single audience, over 1,300 audiences. Great stuff for you there, but even more as far as traditional media, digital media, and also then their lifestyles. What are the hobbies that they like to do, and what subscription services do they subscribe to, and the like. Great stuff there for you to have great insight on your customer's customer, and you might even be able to share that then with your prospect then to help them know something about their customer that they didn't know before, and that makes you very valuable. And again, co-op advertising funds right now, can't stress that enough. This is an opportunity then to expand budgets by tapping into these funds, and that allows you perhaps to double the spend in some cases. There are 100% programs out there, maybe not as plentiful as they once were, but definitely all of these things are great opportunities then. They were going to advertise the train air conditioning systems anyway. So why not then advertise and get some co-op money for doing that and expand the budget? Audrey?
So we like to do handouts after each of these, and wanted to remind you the last month we actually had a download that you can still download. And when you get the slide deck and the recording afterwards, you'll be able to go to that link on there, that bit.ly. But it was a very nice handout called 2021 Local Digital Event Series, Vertical Analysis, Data and Insights. So we just wanted to remind you that, that's a great takeaway that we'd love for you to go get and use as a resource. And we will continue to make these as we go through the year with our digital series. So just wanted to call your attention to it. And when you get the deck, go ahead and go get it for yourself. Next.
Well, and Audrey, I think we need to mention too on that handout, we added home improvement services. So, and plumbers and HVAC are on there too. When you download it, those are 2 new additional. So if you were on the webinar before and you downloaded it, go in and download it again, because there's more in there now.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Celine. Okay, so we said this is going to be hopefully monthly gathering for all of us together. So March 23rd is the next one. It's going to be road trips, RVs, boats, motorcycles, hotels, VRBOs, Airbnbs. We're going to talk about that vertical. Then April 27th is going to be over the top. That's going to be the topic for that. And we just decided, based on our poll that we took with everybody who attended last month's webinar, we surveyed you what category you wanted, and you guys said lawyers and accounting. So guess what? We're going to do it, and it's going to be on May 24th. So
I'm naming that one Lawyers, Ads, and Money.
So,
Anybody over the age of 50 will get that joke. Anyone under the age of 50 have no idea what I'm talking about right now.
so we look forward to you. Look for your, the registration links and the promotions and all our communications out of both of our companies. And we are looking forward to sort of building momentum into this through the year. So go ahead, Dave. So I think, Tom, you were going to talk a little bit about this.
Sure. This is a little bit about our Advantage product. As I mentioned during our session, we talked about the importance of developing sales campaigns using our data. You can get information on our Advantage product from the sites indicated here, and we would be glad to talk to you about how we're helping other clients and what we can be doing for you in your markets. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead, Dave, and move forward. We've got a few things to share as well before we send you all on your way to grab lunch or whatever. So Lee just talked in detail about AdMall, and I just encourage all of you that if you like the data that you saw here and you are not a client of SalesFuel with AdMall, we would love for you to become a client. You get 24/7 access. So go ahead, go to admall.com for more information. We're happy to do a demo and lead you through it. Next slide. We also have something that we just rolled out called SalesFuel Sales Manager Training. It's a great virtual online course that will allow you to upskill your team. Just go to salesfuel.com/SMT for more information on that. And we also have, if you're looking to ramp up as the vaccinations roll out and people start to try to get back to normal, we have SalesFuel Hire, Dave. I just want to show you that. Don't hire a toxic person, hire a rainmaker, and we can show you how to find who's who before you even have an interview with them with this tool. salesfuel.com/hire, where you go for more info on that. And so we just want to say thank you to all of you. For questions and comments, go ahead and reach out to myself or to Celine. We're really excited about this for the rest of the year and hope you'll come next month. And so look for the recording and for the slide deck. And I just want to bid you all a terrific afternoon, and we'll see you next month. Thanks, everybody.